Right, what is my favourite film? That is a tough question.
My favourite film is Happy Gilmore.
My favourite film is Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive.
My favourite film is an experimental piece by Stan Brakhage called The Dante Quartet.
Probably a very significant film for me is the first time I went to the cinema. A friend of mine's mother took a group of us to the cinema. We went to see James Bond, Goldfinger, the very first time I was ever in a cinema, and that's really where my love for film started.
The first time I watched it, it was part of a box set trio of VHS tapes. I had a little room that was attached to mine, and I used to go in there. I had a little television in there, and I would put it on in the mornings before my parents woke up.
When I watch the film, I feel really calm. That's why I've watched it so many times. It's the combination of, I think, the soundtrack and the reality of it, I guess.
How do I feel? I feel stunned, even though I've seen it hundreds of times. It still arrests my attention completely. I'm completely absorbed by it.
You can just enjoy it from start to finish. You don't have to worry about anything when you watch it.
Once I was in that cinema, darkened room, the cliche silver screen, I just fell in love with it.
And then watched it and fell in love.
And I find myself looking at the world in a different way after having seen these films.
The themes that spoke to me the most, probably just the overriding theme of everything he does is for his family. The whole reason he starts out on his journey is trying to help his grandmother. I was a little lad from the East End. It was just a totally different world from what I grew up in, and I think that was a lovely thing to experience. Like there is another world outside Poplar in the East End, you know, and I think that is the beauty of cinema. It can take you away.
A person that's trying to kill the driver comes into the elevator, and he's in the elevator with his love interest, and he manages to position her in the lift so that she won't get injured if he gets a gun out or something.
And you've got this amazing kind of chain reaction of things that the ball hits and travels down, and it comes out and drops into the hole. And
he's strapped to this table, and there's this laser beam that's coming down, and it's going to kind of dissect him in two.
The little pictures, if you like, moving all over the screen. Now, I don't mean they're mobile, I don't mean they're moving around like that. I mean the whole screen is moving like this. And it's doing it, and then it speeds up with no indication of what's happening or why it's doing it.
In such a moment of panic and despair, there could still be that romantic, kind of hopeful element.
I think that was the original, you know, sort of cliffhanging. Is he going to get out of this moment?
And it just comes out of the blue, and it just leaves me, every time I watch it, breathless watching it.
It appeals to me because it's so different from anything else I'd seen. And although I've got films I love, so things like Goodfellas or Shawshank or The Green Mile or any of those kind of big blockbusters, this had an extra element. It
was more sophisticated from your sort of early, I don't know, 50s films of Doris Day, Rock Hudson. It was more like Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Taxi Driver. It was real sort of like, you know, realism.
So if I watch it and I like it, but most people don't, well, usually that's a measure of me liking a film, to be honest.
I don't read reviews. I don't want someone else's opinion to affect the way I feel about a film.
It's not mainstream at all, it is experimental, but it is nonetheless extraordinary, and always seems to elicit this extraordinary response from people who watch it.
You know, there's so many creative minds out there creating so many different programs and films and so many mediums that there's something out there for everyone to enjoy. So not everyone has to enjoy the same thing, and people shouldn't be frowned upon for liking certain mediums of entertainment. It's up to everyone. It's an individual thing, so it doesn't really matter to me.